I bought this Clio 182 as a mini project. Fast forward 6 months, it's had over £5,000 spent on it, but now it has an even bigger issue. And that means something isn't right in the engine, oil is getting into the combustion chamber and burning where it shouldn't be. The problem could either be in the top end or the bottom end of the engine, but to find that out, the engine would need to be removed and stripped down. I'd been quoted up to £5,000 to fully rebuild the engine, so I gave myself 2 options. I either rebuild the current engine myself, or I buy a good used engine and fit that. Both things I have never done. So here it is, a used 80,000 mile Clio 182 engine that I paid £325 for. It even came with a stand. After a very brief clean and removing the inlet manifold, I went ahead and removed the coil plugs. And then I could remove the spark plugs. The good news is that they didn't look too old and they all matched. But there was a little bit of oil on one, so I added 4 new plugs to my list. I then got distracted and started to remove the water pump. I'll be fitting a new one anyway, so I went ahead and removed the lower inlet manifold and found something potentially worrying. So I've just been taking the lower inlet manifold off, and as I did it, a load of oil just dripped all the way out of here. As far as I'm aware, oil is not really meant to be in there. Now, obviously, this engine has been being transported. It sat in the back of my X5 for a while, upside down on its side. So maybe there are bits of oil where they shouldn't be. Hopefully that's not a bad thing, but we'll keep taking it apart and see what we find. Before I take the top of the engine off here to have a look at the cams and everything else, I need to get the belts off and all of the pulleys. Before I do that, I'm gonna flip the engine around and have a look at the sump and see if there's anything there that should be alarming. So that is every single bolt in the sump removed. That's every single one of these. I've heard that these can be a little bit difficult, but they're not too bad. Although one good thing, I believe I do have one missing there, so that's something I'm gonna have to find. Time to take this off. Here we go. One interesting bit here. So there you go. There's how your dipstick works. Obviously we are upside down. This is your dipstick. And there it is. Obviously it goes into the sump, and that tells you exactly how much oil you've got, whether you need to top up. I'm not going to go ahead and take apart any more of this. However, I am going to replace this because I've got a new one of those from Febi. This one doesn't actually look too terrible, but worth changing while you're in there. Something I have just discovered when taking the sump off to have a look is this is the chain for the oil pump, and that's quite loose. So I need to do a bit of research and see if that's normal. It doesn't feel like that's normal, but if it's not, then that is going to be another part to add to the list. After scrolling through some forums online, it turned out that the slack in the chain was perfectly normal, so I moved on to something with a familiar name. The next thing I'm going to do to lock the crankshaft is use something called a TDC pin. Someone made Top Dead Center in real life. I can't believe it. I don't know why they're copying our name. That is what I need to do. This will lock the crankshaft in place, and then I have to get some different tools to lock the top end in place. That is when I can start removing stuff up top. Let me show you how this goes in and where it goes. So I have got a socket on the crankshaft. So that is just rotating the crankshaft. And what I'm going to do is I've taken a bolt out down here. Now, if I try and put this pin in now, it won't go in all the way. Now you need that to be all the way in. We want it to be all the way sitting right on that. So I'm going to put it in, put a little bit of pressure on it, and then rotate the crank. We should. There we go. Now that is all the way in, and that means the crank is not going to move anywhere. That means I can lock everything in place up here with the correct tools and then start to remove the cover and the camshaft. Now, before we go any further with the engine, this is a quick reminder that if you are buying a used car, you should always run a car vertical check.
That's right, because every single day, hundreds of cars get crashed, but some of them get fixed and put back on the road in an attempt to hide their shady past. With a car vertical check, you can find out that dodgy history.
All you have to do is enter your reg number or your VIN, and a car vertical report will tell you if that car has been crashed, stolen, or clocked.
Now, your eyes don't deceive you. This is not Will's blue Clio. This is his old silver Clio, which he sold to Ben behind the camera. But luckily for Will, he has got green ticks for odometer, finance, and damage. But it does also show us that he's had 6 previous owners, so it gives us a yellow marker there.
Now, my granddad recently told me he wanted to buy an Insignia. That was troubling news, but even more troubling than that was the car vertical report. Now, while the advert did say it had been written off, it didn't say it was written off twice. Now, as you can see here, we've got a yellow marker for damage, and it says this vehicle was damaged 2 times. Now, he did still buy the car, but with this information, it meant he had a better deal. He could look more into the damage and ask the seller about what's going on with this history. Now, with the car vertical report, you can find out all of this dodgy history.
So the next time that you're buying a car, van, motorbike, Will has shown that you shouldn't buy a Renault Clio 182, but you should run a car vertical check to make sure that the price you pay for it matches its history.
And as an added bonus, Car Vertical are offering you guys 20% off when you use code 2DC. I locked the 2 cam gears together with a locking tool so I could undo both of the cam gears to remove them. With those out, I could now take the cam cover off fully. So this is the rocker cover off now. This is basically as far as I'm going to go in terms of actually disassembling this engine. There are bolts in here where you can remove the entire head of the engine, where you can then get access to the pistons and the bottom end. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to trust this engine. I had a video of it running, so if it goes in and it starts smoking, then that was a mistake. But it doesn't look too bad in there. Obviously, it's oily. That's normal, nothing looks too worn. What we will do is we'll have a look at the camshafts, because those are the bits that I will be replacing to get a little bit more power and a bit more speed. These are my old camshafts, and then these are the ones that are going in. These are obviously used camshafts. These are from a newer Clio, the ones that have a little bit more power, the ones that have roughly 200 horsepower. These are actually what I have in my car currently. So I bought some more. These were 100 quid. These don't look too bad. Obviously there's a little bit of kind of usual wear and tear, but not too bad at all. Even after saying I wouldn't remove the head, I got bored one evening and did it anyway. But that turned out to be a good thing. Okay, so been a little while. I've been waiting on some parts for the engine. I've got it down here with the head off. Been waiting for things like a head gasket, some head bolts, but I have discovered a bit of a problem, and that has cost me a lot more money to fix. I will show you that now. So this is the head off of the car. I've taken the original camshafts out. This is one of the original camshafts, but I have spotted a bit of damage. If you have a look here, you have these machined bits where the camshafts sit at each end. So you've got a hole there. That is perfectly normal. That's for oil and cooling and everything else. In these ones, you don't have that. This is obviously also where the camshaft sits, but they do not have that machined groove. But in this one, if you can see on this camshaft, a little bit of metal on the actual camshaft there. And then you can also see that tiny little bit of damage just in there. And if I take this camshaft out, it has made a groove in there that shouldn't be there. That's how it should look. That's how this one looks. You can see as well that that edge there is very rough, and it's made a bit of a divot here. Now, I have had a look online, and some people say it's perfectly normal. Loads of the engines have that damage. Don't worry about it. And then some people say, mate, you're going to need a full rebuild. I would check your rod bearings, I'd check your shells, I'd check everything. But I mean, I've had a look at the bottom end. I can't see any damage there. There was nothing in the oil that came out of it. So I was going to run with it, but I thought, why would I put all this time into ripping an engine out, putting an engine in, rebuilding, spending all this money with new parts, new gaskets, only for something like that to fail later down the line? So let me show you what I've bought. I've just been this morning on a 3-hour round trip to pick up this freshly rebuilt head. Now these camshafts and these I'm not going to need, they are just going to be spares for me, but all of these springs, everything has all been rebuilt. So there's a new one, and there's the one that has come out of the engine that I bought recently. Obviously this one looks much, much cleaner, and that is because it has been cleaned, this has been freshly rebuilt, and it has been ported. So what that means is these bits here, there'll be ports on the other side as well. You have inlet and exhaust. If you look in here, this has all been machined to look a little bit thinner and make air flow a little bit better. If you look in here, this is the original machining. See how that's a little bit thicker? This bit here is a little bit wider, more of a flat surface. And this has been ever so slightly sort of knife edged, a little bit sharper. This cost me 300 quid, which is basically what the engine cost me. So I've doubled my costs already, but I didn't want to risk anything with that head. And I thought, while it's off, while I'm in there, might as well replace it. So now I can start putting that together, might give it a lick of paint as well. And then I can start putting the whole engine back together. So I'm going to get started on that. After giving the mating faces a good clean, I fitted a new head gasket and lined up the new head on the block. Then I could drop in my new head bolts and torque those up. Then I fitted all of the rocker arms and lifters, which are what transfers motion from the camshafts to the valves, which then meant I could fit my new camshafts. Now, one thing I do have to say while I'm putting this engine back together is that I've got a load of parts from Febby and Blueprint, so a massive, massive thank you to those. I've got a dephaser pulley from them, I've got belts, seals, gaskets, my thermostat, so many different bits. So if you're ever looking for OE matching parts, make sure you check out Febby and Blueprint as well, because they are really, really good bits and it's what we always use. Now, rocker cover going on. It doesn't have a normal gasket like a rubber one or whatever. It has, you have to use sealant, so that is what I have just done. Also, I painted this. Not the best job, but just some high temp engine paint, and job was a good one. There we go. That will need to come down properly once I get the bolts in. There we go. So we have the engine cover, the rocker cover, the oil breather plate has all been put together. Some new bolts on there as well, just to make it look a little bit nicer and means I don't have to use the old ones. And now it is time to do the timing. So the timing belt, all the gears will have to go on here. That's the crank pulley down there. And then to time this, these Renaults are a little bit different to some other cars. You can use one of these bars like this. Now this isn't a standard one. You would usually have a Renault one which has got a slot here and a slot here, and what it means is I've got an old camshaft for you. If you can see that little slot in there, you've got one in that camshaft and you'll have one in this camshaft as well, and then this tool here, make sure that you can line them up properly. Now this one is an 8-degree tool specifically for the camshafts that I've put in there. This chap here has machined these and he sells them, otherwise you would spend a long time trying to get it right. So I've got it locked in there, which means the timing is all correct. All I need to do is make sure it comes in nice and loose once I've got the belt in, and I'm ready to go. You'll notice I'm wearing something different. It's also dark outside, so I've spent all of today doing this. I will explain very briefly. It's the timing. So you have to get that absolutely correct, otherwise your car will run badly, it will be bad on fuel, it will lose power, or even worse, if you really mess it up, you're smashing bits of engine into other bits of engine. I think I've done it. I spent a couple of hours just tweaking and trying to get it right, mostly getting angry, then going to look at YouTube, but I think I've got it right. And now, if this bar here goes in smoothly, I've given the engine a few rotations, everything tightened up, everything torqued, this goes in smoothly, I think I'm done. Let's tie it up. There we go, that is where this tool will go. Now this should go in with no force at all. Oh, that is nice. That is exactly how that should be. A little bit of movement is fine. That bit of movement is exactly why it's so difficult to get right, because it's not perfectly machined, but in and out, perfect like that. The crank is at top dead center, and this is fine, even after some rotations. Now, I will note, there are some bits I'm going to take from my car at the moment. So we've got this upper inlet, the lower inlet, I'm taking all of those bits off, the intake, the throttle body, I'll use my exhaust manifold, my injectors, my coil pack, all of those bits I need to take off of this car. I don't want to take them off yet, otherwise the car will be immobile. This car may be smoking, but it is running. I'm going to make the most of it. When this one comes out, I'll take the aux belt and alternator and those bits and attach it to this one. Please excuse the mess. I've been having a meltdown. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put on the covers for these bits, everything else that I can attach before I take bits off of that car, and then this engine should be ready to go. All that was left for me to do was pull my old smoky engine out in preparation for fitting my hopefully better engine. So the engine is now fully together. We've got all of the inlet manifolds on, we've got the injector cover on, we've got the aux belt on with the pulleys and all the bits there. Gearbox is back on with the clutch and the flywheel in. Everything, I think, is bolted down. The engine is now out of this, Ali will have just seen. So tomorrow, that engine is going in that car and we will see if I've messed something up. My dad and I spent a bit of time getting the fitment right and finally got the engine in. And after a few hours of routing pipes and wires to where they should be, it was time for the first startup. First start, entire day putting it all back together. Ignition, oil okay, that's good.
Water absolutely pissing me out of that hole there.
I'd missed a bolt in the thermostat, so with that sorted, we went again.
Take 2, hopefully no leaks.
I think that's a success.
Oh, dear me.
This little project has been a huge learning experience, but it really has been great fun. So make sure you subscribe for more videos like this, and you can watch another video here.